Hello, my name is Lee Pressor. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Pressor.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Pressor. My guest today is Congressman Rodney Davis. Mr. Davis is the congressman from the 13th Congressional District in Illinois. He represents a portion of the St. Louis Metro East area, including parts of Collinsville, part of Maryville, Glen Carbon, Edwardsville, SIUE, northern parts of Alton and Godfrey. His district from Metro East goes eastward to Champaign County. This includes parts of 13 other counties. Prior to his election as a congressman, Mr. Davis served as projects director for Congressman John Shimkus. Congressman Davis is a member of the House Committee on Agriculture and the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Rodney Davis, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks for having me again.
You're very welcome. It's been a year. When I looked it up, I couldn't believe that it had been a full year since the last time that you were here. So we'll have to have you more often.
Well, thank you.
You just need to get yourself reelected in order to come back here as a congressman. Otherwise, we'll just have to have you as a private person.
Well, we plan on winning again, so I hope to keep coming for years to come.
Now, you're, and I'm not wanting to turn this into a campaign rally speech here for the people out there listening. But I did want to ask, what do you see as the main difference between yourself and your Democrat opponent and Callis?
Well, I think the difference between me and my opponent and any opponent I've had is that I've got a record to run on, and it's a record of success in the short time that I've been a member of Congress. I went to Washington, told the constituents of this district that I wanted to govern. And that means working across the aisle with Republicans and Democrats and actually putting good, conservative, fiscally responsible pieces of legislation onto the floor and pass them and have them signed into law. I was the only freshman to actually be named to 2 conference committees, and both of those bills, the Farm Bill and the WRDA bill, actually will save taxpayers billions of dollars. As a matter of fact, the Farm Bill is the largest single cut in mandatory spending that we've had this entire Congress, and it will save $23 billion in mandatory spending. And I think that's a good first step, and that's something that we also have to take advantage of, the ability to change the policies to make them more fiscally responsible, and that's exactly what we've done with both of these bills.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you go to look out on the internet, and I know that the internet can be a good source of information, and it can be a lot of drivel in there. But for whatever reason, your district is listed as one of the most controversial or open, or what do they call them, battleground seats. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, because the Democrats in Springfield, Mike Madigan, John Cullerton, and Pat Quinn drew it to actually be a competitive district, and they wanted to elect a Democrat in 2012. Well, they almost succeeded. Luckily, we were the only one of 6 targeted races in this new gerrymandered map by the Democrats in Springfield. We were the only Republican to win. My fellow freshmen, all 5 of my fellow freshmen are Democrats. This is the process in Illinois that many are trying to change. The state of Illinois actually is the one who draws all of the congressional maps for each of our districts, and it's the state legislators in Springfield who have the final say on what those lines look like.
I see. So your feeling is that the district was designed 50-50, or more heavy Democrat, or just a little more heavy Republican, or what? Because there were, in your election, as you just pointed out, you won in 2012 with 237,000 votes, just ahead of your opponent who had 236,000 votes. You were just think that was the closest congressional race in the United States?
It was the closest Republican victory in the United States. There were some closer Democrat victories, but we were the closest Republican victory. And it just goes to show you how much of a swing district this is. This is a district that even with all of the ratings systems that people come out with, they rate it as an even district, and which is okay, because I think that actually helps me to send a message to Washington that I came there to actually govern and not just fight.
Well, let's talk specifics here. Talk about, you just mentioned it, it's called the Water Resources Reform and Development Act of 2014.
Yeah.
Quite a mouthful. And you were also working with your fellow Congressman Bill Enyart
Yes.
on that bill.
Yeah.
So just what is it, first of all?
Well, WRDA actually is the bill that sets all of the policies that the Corps of Engineers have to follow when upgrading our locks and dams and water infrastructure, which we all know in this area is crucial to getting our products out into the open ocean and overseas. What a lot of your viewers may not know is that about 80% of the products that go up and down the Mississippi River are coal and grain. And that's the epitome of the 13th Congressional District. As a matter of fact, when there was a threat of low water just a year and a half ago, my coal mining families lost jobs in Macoupin and Montgomery County because they thought they might not be able to ship that coal overseas because the federal government doesn't let us burn Illinois coal as much as they used to right here in the United States. And the provision that Bill Enyart and I worked on together was one that would allow the Corps of Engineers to have more flexibility in dealing with low water situations such as what I was talking about.
Well, why don't you tell it before, after? What was it like before? What was the change after?
Well, the WRDA bill, the biggest change that we made is that we've changed the paperwork process. I mean, I was shocked, even when I got to Washington, to find out that the average design and engineering phase, the paperwork phase, before you even get an idea into construction, averaged 15 years and no cap.
That's saying something. I mean, you've been around. You have quite a bit of experience in working in Washington before you ever became a congressman. So for you to be concerned and mystified, that's something.
Well, no paperwork should take 15 years and not have a cap on spending. That just incentivizes delay after delay after delay. The best provision, one of the best provisions that we put into this bill is we are going to make sure that the Corps of Engineers can run, and other agencies can run concurrent studies, and it will last a maximum of 3 years and have a $3 million cap. Saving that time and saving that money means that we have the potential to get to that construction phase and create the jobs that politicians keep talking about creating and actually reduce the cost to the taxpayers by billions.
Now, what are we building, first of all?
Yeah, this will be the upgrades to our locks and dams. We drive by them in the Metro East on a regular basis and take for granted how important they are to our agricultural economy and basically our local economy. These locks and dams on the Mississippi and Illinois River have outlived their life. They're maintaining these facilities now, and we've already chosen a plan to follow to upgrade them. Now we have to make sure that the policies that the Corps of Engineers follows are better structured, and then we have to actually look at some different ways to fund the upgrades. And one other provision that I worked with Mark Kirk and also with Sherry Bustos, another colleague of mine on, is public-private partnership language. And what this would mean is that private industry could come in and help kickstart the construction of large water infrastructure projects instead of just relying upon an inland waterway trust fund. This is exactly how other countries build their water infrastructure, and we need that option to make sure that we actually move forward instead of remaining stagnant on upgrading these important pieces of infrastructure.
So this is a done deal. It's passed. It's in law.
Yep.
Has it been signed by the president already?
I think it passed the Senate. I'm not sure if the president has signed it yet, but this bill has had the most. This was a conference report. This bill has, I mean, it had 4 no votes in the entire House of Representatives. It passed our committee, and I got to give Chairman Bill Schuster a lot of credit. Passed our committee unanimously. I mean, who thinks anything passes unanimously in Washington? But this one does, because we did it without earmarks, and we changed policies that are going to save taxpayers billions, and we did it in a way that still maintains congressional oversight and actually defunded billions of dollars in old projects that hadn't been touched by the Corps of Engineers in years.
Isn't there some monetary sinkhole of a project going on the Ohio River right now that's just been going on for literally for decades, that they've been pouring hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into?
It's been billions. It's called Olmstead. It's the Olmstead Lock Dam project. I've been there. It's here in Illinois along the Ohio River. Just down in the southwestern portion of our state. And this project was built in what they call the wet, which is they basically built the dam in the structure in the river. Whereas before, they would build it outside and then install it. This new and innovative technique that the Corps of Engineers talked to me about years ago and about how it was going to save taxpayers billions actually has cost taxpayers billions.
What was the original price tag on that? I mean, it was like a couple $100 million or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was probably close to around $500 million when you look at the overall cost structure, but I don't know that for sure. I don't remember, but I do know that it's been billions more, and it's basically eaten up the entire Inland Waterway Trust Fund. The Inland Waterway Trust Fund is a fee that's collected by the federal government and paid by the barge operators and those who use the navigation channel to fund infrastructure upgrades. But when you have the entire fund going towards one project with still no end in sight, we had to make some changes, and that's why we've got the public-private partnership language, and that's why we've changed the policies and cut down on the paperwork too. That's going to lead to more construction, and actually we still have to finish Olmstead, and we have to make sure that Congress does not allow another project like Olmstead to actually come in and suck billions of taxpayer dollars away.
Now, I didn't mean when we first started talking to get into this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Is it time for some reform of the Army Corps of Engineers?
Well, the bill we passed is reform to the Corps of Engineers.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, the WRDA bill sets the policies in place that the Corps of Engineers are governed by. So when I say we've cut the paperwork process down from an average of 15 years to 3, that changes the way the Corps of Engineers operates, because the Corps, their budget is based on a project-by-project basis. WRDA authorizes all of those projects, and the Corps has to have those authorizations in place to be able to ask for the appropriations. And without that authorization, they wouldn't have the ability to actually go in and use that authority to build new locks and dams or to deal with any other issues like the Metro East levee districts. There's another provision that we were able to work in conjunction with the Metro East levee districts to give them some flexibility to where the Corps now can look at those projects as one rather than individual levee projects, which makes it easier to actually find the local match and address the issues that are inevitably going to come up. And it takes away the bureaucracy and simplifies things. I don't understand why we don't have a message in Washington. This is a message I keep talking about. Let's not make things more complicated. Let's just simplify it. And that's exactly what WRDA has done with the Corps of Engineers, and we're going to simplify the processes they follow.
Well, I know the Metro East levee district, when we've had the guy here several times talking about what it is taking just to get started on that project, and main complaint was how long the Corps of Engineers were taking to get their part ready to go.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it seems to me, and I've made statements in Washington about this, it looks like the Corps of Engineers and FEMA are basically racing each other, the Corps not proceeding and FEMA basically proceeding to raise flood insurance rates on all the hardworking taxpayers of the Metro East instead of working in conjunction together and addressing the problems. I got to give the locals credit. You know, they've stepped up, they've got their share of the project, and the Corps of Engineers needs to also step up and do what they've promised to do. And that's exactly why we put this language in WRDA that specifically addresses the Metro East levee districts. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly why we're going to continue to fight for the Corps to move forward fast.
Now, there was, I guess, another big issue that you worked on was the Farm Bill.
Yes.
This is like $1 trillion?
Oh, so it's, yeah, in what we have.
What goes on for $1 trillion that we're spending $1 trillion of tax money on a Farm Bill?
Well, remember, the Farm Bill, only about 20% of it's agriculture. 80% is the food and nutrition program, the food stamp program. And what we tried to do is actually come up with a very fiscally conservative approach and that ended up passing, and about 80% of the $23 billion in mandatory spending that we saved came from the ag side. We got rid of direct payments. So there's no more direct payments coming to farmers. We strengthened crop insurance, which means farmers have skin in the game. We actually established some new regulatory review at my request to ensure that ag has a seat at the table when the EPA comes up with crazy ideas like regulating milk spills just like they do oil spills. I mean, come on. Which one can you clean up with cats, Lee?
Okay, yes.
So that's why.
Or a hose.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's exactly why we, put some common sense provisions into this bill. But I'm most proud that we were able to do all of this, and our farmers are better equipped to actually have that safety net, that risk management safety net that they want, without the direct payments, and thus saving $23 billion in the process. We also implemented a work requirement pilot program that I don't think went far enough. I don't think it's out of line to ask an able-bodied adult who has no dependent children, who isn't enrolled in an education or training program, who doesn't meet a plethora of other exemptions. I don't think it's too much to ask that individual to work for their food and nutrition benefits, to also maybe, if they can't get paired up with a job, to perform volunteer or community service and learn a valuable skill. That's not too much to ask. And
Who says that it is too much to ask?
Many on the other side of the aisle in Washington did, and we didn't make nearly as many reforms as we could have, but that doesn't mean we're not going to continue to work to make those reforms.
What reasons were offered that was just too hard?
Well, one thing about Washington is you hear a lot of reasons on a wide variety of issues, and usually it's just based on rhetoric, and unfortunately.
Well, I want to go back, though. I mean, you said this is $1 trillion bill, and 80% of it is food stamps and nutrition. So we're talking some $800 billion worth of monies being spent. And so the people who are talking about spending $800 billion worth of money think that it's just, let's just give it away with no rules, no regulation, or minimal rules and regulations?
They feel the program's working very effectively right now. We were able to make some changes to the program. We also closed a loophole called the Heat and Eat loophole, and this loophole allowed states, Illinois wasn't one that was taking advantage of it, but other states were giving food and nutrition benefits to anyone who got $1 in energy assistance. $1. We actually changed the barometer to $20. Didn't take the program away. And that saved taxpayers $8 billion. And I don't think anybody is going to say that asking somebody to contribute $20 towards an energy bill that they then could qualify, and that it's an overreach. But those simple changes are what helps save taxpayer dollars. And then when we make those changes, we get criticized.
There was an infrastructure bill early on in President Obama's administration for $787 billion that was supposed to be spent on infrastructure. And I know that the St. Louis area got some of it. The
America's Central Port.
America's Central Port, which is an important port district on the Mississippi River, got some. And there was over in Missouri an extension of Missouri 141 connecting where it stopped by Highway 40 all the way up to Interstate 70. They got some money there. But $787 billion just evaporated without, $787 billion should have been enough to rebuild the entire interstate highway system. $787 billion could have been enough to rebuild the entire air traffic control system. You could probably do both of those things with $787 billion. Where'd that money go?
Well, you missed a project too that was funded by the stimulus program, and that's the Troy interchange that got upgraded. But you have the Troy interchange, you have America's Central Port, you have the projects in Missouri. Infrastructure, this bill, this expense, almost $1 trillion, was justified to actually put people back to work for infrastructure projects. Only about 6% of that infrastructure funding, or only about 6% of all the spending in the stimulus bill was infrastructure. But that's the only projects that you see the Vice President and you see other members of the administration touting the benefits of the stimulus bill. I think you would have got.
If I'm hearing you right, you're saying about $60 billion out of 787 actually went towards infrastructure.
Yes.
Where did the other? Let's subtract 787 minus 60, $727 billion that that was eventually added on to the debt, and therefore interest is being paid forever on that. Where did that money go?
It went to create programs that gave us Solyndra, which has cost taxpayers $500 million. We also created other programs that were designed to grow government. And unfortunately, the American taxpayers, the hardworking taxpayers of this country, did not get the benefit of an infrastructure bill. And that's why you saw 0 Republicans vote for it back then, long before I got there. But if we were going to talk infrastructure investment and reprioritizing how we spend money to actually invest in infrastructure, just like that WRDA bill, you would see a lot of bipartisan support.
See, I'm the kind of guy that believes that government is supposed to be about accomplishing stuff.
Yes.
Actually making stuff happen. Building roads, building airports, building this, that, fixing the Mississippi River, building ports so that we can have more impact in the world economy. Other people seem to believe that government is about taking money from the Treasury and putting it into individual pockets as paychecks. I'm not sure that we can afford, I'm just talking personally, I'm not sure we can afford to keep going and putting money into people's paychecks at the cost of $1 trillion a year, or even $500 billion a year.
Yeah.
With interest that runs forever.
Well, if we would have seen the $787 billion invested in infrastructure, you would have seen the unemployment rate actually go down. And the fact of the matter is, the unemployment rate was projected to go down from 7% to 5% with that $1 trillion investment, and it actually went up. So it didn't work. If we would have invested in infrastructure, like you and I agree, we should be investing in building projects. But $787 billion versus $60 billion is a huge difference and a huge discrepancy. And that $787 in infrastructure, while also going and looking at where areas of spending in Washington are being wasted and reprioritize some of that money so that we live within our means, I think is a good thing that could create the good paying jobs that, again, politicians like talking about, but we never seem to have them come to fruition because we're basically struggling with this economy still.
Well, I know some of that money actually was redirected towards cops and firemen as well. And I understand that there was a desire because there was considerable angst about how we're going to afford to keep them on the payroll, but putting them on a credit card doesn't seem like a proper methodology for paying for basic services like policemen and firemen.
Well, keep in mind, there are programs already in place that were funded on an annual basis to help our fire service personnel and also help our policemen. And what happened with the stimulus is it became an extra crutch. We could have, again, reprioritized the way that we spend money, and we still need to make sure that our fire grant program, the Assistance to Firefighter Grant Program, is fully funded. We need to make sure that our COPS investments through community-oriented policing services in Washington, that's a great program that helps small sheriff's departments and local municipalities upgrade their radios so that they have instant communication with the other departments around them. Those are very important things that don't need $1 trillion being borrowed on the backs of our kids and grandkids to actually achieve. And when you look at the stimulus bill, that stimulus bill is going to go down in history as one of the largest single additions to our national debt without the results that we were promising.
I don't think that people that there's a large number of people in the United States who don't understand that while they can run up their credit cards, Master, Visa, American Express, and eventually get out of them through bankruptcy, nations cannot.
Right.
That at the end of the day, nations, when they lose their credit rating, that all you have to do is look to Russia in the 90s after the fall of the Soviet Union. The Russian people suffered greatly. That's why they wound up with a gangster class.
Yeah. No.
In the last we're down probably closer to 4 minutes. I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about the Hire More Heroes Act of 2013, and time is running short.
Well, the Hire More Heroes Act came about by a meeting we had in Edwardsville with my Veterans Advisory Board. And Brad Leviti from the Madison County Vets Court asked why do veterans who are on TRICARE, who get their health care through the DOD or the VA, why are they counted towards the Obamacare 50 employee limit? I said, I didn't know why. And
Do you have businesses that were on the edge there that made a difference as to whether
it could.
or not?
Yeah, I mean, he's the one, the veteran's the one that came up with the idea. And I thought, you know what, this is a great way to incentivize small businesses who are on the edge to actually hire more of our heroes, hire more of our veterans. And I introduced a bill, and it passed with only one no vote, a Democrat out of New York. He's the only one that voted against it. And I got to give Roy Blunt a lot of credit. He tried putting the same language into a bill that didn't pass last week, but Roy's actually keeping the fight up with me, and I'm very proud to have him on my team.
So this passed in the House, but not in the Senate. So it's not a law.
It's not law yet. No, it passed overwhelmingly in the House of Representatives 2 months ago, a little over 2 months ago, and Roy's pushing in the Senate right now to
and
get it.
And the majority leader's take on this? Yay, no?
You never know what Harry Reid's going to do. I mean,
well, he makes all the difference. I mean,
he put it. The language,
the agenda.
The language was included in a bill that failed, and we're going to continue to hope that the majority leader looks at this common sense change to Obamacare as one that's necessary, and I think Roy Blunt is leading the charge very effectively over there to hopefully get it as a standalone bill or put it with another piece of legislation that can move forward soon.
Mm-hmm. So, here in the last couple of minutes, you like being Congressman?
Oh, this is a great opportunity. I mean, it's for a small town kid from Taylorville, Illinois, to be able to serve in Washington on behalf of almost 800,000 hardworking taxpayers in this district. It's a privilege that I don't take lightly at all. As a matter of fact, that's why I want to be out in the communities that I serve, get a chance to meet folks and talk about how we've reduced the deficit in this country. We're spending at the lowest levels and spending closer to what we take in at any time since World War II. We have made progress, but there's still a lot more progress that needs to be made, and that's why I want to get another term and go back and continue the fight for fiscal austerity and for opportunities.
And how would your life be different if the Senate becomes a Republican group?
Oh, it would be huge. Elections matter. I mean, when you take the Senate, for instance, it's basically an insulation point for the president not to have to make a decision. And we all know the president during his time in Springfield didn't like to make a lot of decisions. He voted present over 100 times. I don't understand why anybody votes present unless you have a distinct conflict of interest. But the president doesn't like to make decisions. A Republican Senate would allow us to pass common sense reforms and actually send them to the president's desk where there is no present button. He would actually have to make a decision, yes or no, and then go explain that decision to the American people. Right now, he doesn't have to do that. He actually has the Senate, Harry Reid and Dick Durbin as the insulation points.
Mm-hmm. We've run out of time. We definitely want you to come back. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And to my audience, I've been speaking with Congressman Rodney Davis. He's the congressman that represents the Illinois 13th District. For those of you who are interested in having other people view this program is going to be sent up to YouTube, so you can show it to them there. Just look up Conversation with Lee Pressor, Rodney Davis. Thank you very much. See you next time.